Hey Paradise people, I'm Bella Rooney, and welcome back to another episode of Protecting Paradise. Today is a super interesting episode on a topic that I really know nothing about: green finance and the role that financial institutions play in the climate crisis. I got to have a lovely chat with Sangeeta Laudus, a senior advisor international relations in strategic communications and engagement for the Cayman Islands Government office in the UK. What a tongue twister! We chatted about her passions for sustainability and climate change initiatives, her background career, and she broke down for me exactly what green finance is and the role financial institutions play in the climate crisis. So without further ado, let's let Sangeeta speak for herself. Hello. And welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming.
It's a pleasure, and it's been a pleasure to get to know you whilst I've been here. And yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to you today.
Okay, awesome. Well, I've looked over some of your, prior experiences, and I have to say I don't understand any of it. And I'm quite in the deep end when it comes to things like green finance and the role of financial institutions and how they can combat climate change. So let's before we dive into that, can you just give us a little background, and how did you get here and your passion for climate change? How did that bring you to the place you're in now?
So my big part of my career until I got into this space was as a debt capital markets lawyer, qualifying as a lawyer in London and working with big companies raising finance. And I did that for close to 20 years, both at law firms and investment banks. I also had a business which I set up with my now ex-husband, which was an accessory business, a fashion label. And I did all the marketing and PR for that, which is how I learned and started to have a passion for this area of work. We got divorced, he took the business, and I thought to myself, I don't think I can give up the marketing side. I really enjoy it because I'm a creative at heart. And the idea of going back to just reviewing contracts just didn't feel like it was going to keep me, happy. So I stopped practicing law back in 2015, I think, and moved across to do marketing for law firms. And it was at that time when I was doing the marketing, I was horizon scouting for our clients to see what was of interest to clients, and green finance was just starting then. So green bonds, essentially, which are ways of raising money on the capital markets, issuing a bond, and using that for green purposes, so renewables, solar, And at that stage, it was very, very new. It was a very new area. This is, as I said, sort of around 2016, 2017. But one of the things I was saying to the firm I was working at is that you're doing a lot of this different kind of financing in the green space. You need to bring it all together. So I led on that, bringing it, consolidating their offering so that clients had like a one-stop shop. So they said, okay, if I need advice on my merger and acquisition, if I need finance advice or litigation, we were trying to present it under the green umbrella. So that's how I got into it.
Okay.
And as I was doing that work, I learned about the work the City of London were doing in relation to green finance. I know you want me to maybe explain a bit more what is green finance.
What is green finance?
Yeah. And I can, I will do. So essentially I then learnt about the work being done at the City of London, which then led me to my role supporting the City of London in its COP26 engagement. COP26 got postponed because of COVID, and so we had, I think it was around another year and a bit to keep momentum going. And so that's when I led on this whole engagement campaign to make sure people were focusing. And that's very much about finance. So there's so many different things that need to be done around climate change. But when we think about it, you need the money in order to implement the projects. So that's where the sort of a whole finance piece comes in. And we can talk about what that means. But so I led on that campaign, marketing campaign, really trying to drive the momentum, putting the spotlight on the sort of challenges, issues, initiatives. And then that led me to the role I'm doing now, which is as a consultant. So I've gone freelance. I work with different companies, different entities, and one of my clients is the Cayman Islands UK office, so the government's UK office, and it's been fantastic.
Okay, so there's a lot there.
Sorry.
No, but it's so interesting because so many people don't realize that they can make an impact to or environmental issues. Like, to me, I always thought I have to be a scientist, or I have to be, an environmental activist. But people who maybe are more, like-minded to you with finance and marketing, they can make a big difference. And I think that's really interesting. So let's kind of go into green finance. Break it down for me, because I have no idea.
I mean, it is just finance. I mean, and the words green and ESG and transition bonds and blue bonds. I mean, there are so many different bits of jargon out there, but essentially what it comes down to is, companies, projects all need financing. And so green finance essentially is finance that is being used towards green purposes. So, and one of the ways they were trying to ensure that companies did that with the bonds is that there was so if you say I'm raising some money, I'm borrowing money, or I'm issuing a bond in the markets, you have to make sure that you're actually using that money for the green purposes. So it's not like saying, I want to issue a green bond, and then you go off and do something that's not green with it. So there is some restrictions on what you can use your money for. And I think essentially what's been happening a lot in the last couple of years is trying to make sure more and more companies are, they're borrowing money for those green purposes. But then on the investment side, it's looking at companies, how are they investing? And so that's where the ESG label comes in. And are you investing your money in environmental, social, governance areas? All it is really just trying to look at what people are raising that money for and ensuring it's going towards initiatives and areas that are going to help with the climate change, crisis that we're sort of all facing.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think, as you say, this is what I've loved about this sort of, not loved, I mean, it's a horrible, it's very frightening. We're all, got this existential crisis there. But what I find, one of the positives is that we're all coming together. And I was, working with finance companies all my life, but then all of a sudden it's like, all these bankers are now talking about conservation and biodiversity. And it's wonderful, because it used to be just about, balance sheets and profit, loss. But now it's like nature and nature-based solutions.
That's cool.
Which is something I've always been interested in myself. To see it come together is wonderful.
That's so cool. So green purposes would be like renewable energies and stuff like that?
Yeah, anything, wind farms or, ways that a business is going to become more sustainable. So, because all businesses, or, we all need, we need to have money in order to do these things. So it's just finding ways for that money to be utilised in that way. And even like with mortgages, I think I heard, I was at the National Trust Conference, and they were talking about, I think, on the second day about sort of green mortgages coming in. So people then getting, having money being lent to them, but also then it being written in that they have to be implementing some sustainability into their build or so that's what that would be. That's how that's how you can make sure people are moving in the right direction.
Oh, that's so interesting. No, I can't. I never even. I don't think about these things, but I mean, I really should, I guess, as I'm getting older. It's something that people don't, because it's new, I guess, right? And it's, I don't know, in Cayman, I know we have panels, solar panels, and so I think that's really cool. Okay, so you worked in the run-up to COP26 in several capacities, one of which was UNFCCC High-Level Climate Champions Finance Team, which I'm not sure what that is, but to support the strategic comms and the lead-up. So who exactly are they, and what was the gravity of this event for that?
Yeah, so the UNFCCC Climate Champions, so Nigel Topping, so that obviously the UK together with Italy were host nations for COP26, and Nigel Topping was the UK nominated high-level climate champion. And so his team, they've got a big campaign Race to Net Zero, and there were different areas, so one being finance. And so essentially I was at the City of London, they seconded me over, and it was just to support the team that was looking at the finance piece of it for COP26. As it says on that, it was just really giving them some support on the strategic comms, helping them writing, developing some of the planning. They had a whole series of events at COP26 in Glasgow, and I was just sort of behind the scenes supporting that team. And it was, as you say, I mean, it was one of those, I mean, the last couple of years I've had lots of pinch me moments in my career, liaising with such senior people. I mean, someone like Nigel Topping and his team, and I mean, when the work I was doing in the City of London with Mark Carney, who's the ex-Bank of England governor. I mean, even here, I've had real pinch-me moments in Cayman with some of the work I'm doing. So, yeah, it has been a pretty amazing kind of last few years professionally, and I don't take anything for granted. I feel really blessed to be able to work in amazingly sort of impactful areas with people who are trying to make a difference.
Yeah, and so, you know, the outcomes of COP26, obviously there were tons of promises made, which are very exciting, but we've had promises in the past, and I'm not going to get into that, but what were some of the promises in your field that, you know, would impact Cayman, if you can think of any?
I mean, you probably saw Mia Mockley's sort of speech, and the fact that, and I think there was a big focus, especially in the last few months in the run-up, I know with the high-level climate champions as well, on developed sort of small island states. And I think that's where there'll be a real impact, because I think, you know, that there's such a lot that has to be done, and a lot of the focus has been on big countries, I suppose, you know, India and China and what they need to do. And I guess, you know, again, it's beyond frustrating in a way when you are from an island and you're thinking, well, what I've done in my island is not the reason we're in the situation. So it's but you're facing all of the consequences, and it's a really difficult space to be in. And I can understand the challenges and frustrations, because you think, well, we'll do everything, we'll be 100% sustainable, but you know, it's a difficult one. But I think what was positive about it is it puts that issue on the radar of the global stage, and it's getting the help and the support globally to try and to make sure that, you know, knowledge is shared, and the funding or the support that's needed is given to the islands and the developing nations as well that need the support.
No, completely, because I know we had a talk on nature markets and how those could be implemented here. I don't know if you want to just give a little rundown on nature markets so people know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
So, as you're referring to last week's engagements by Ralph Sharma.
Yeah. What exactly? It was an amazing talk. So, what exactly was that?
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, when I first came across the work of Ralph and the team when I was back at the City of London. I did this thing called lifestyle magazine shows, where I was creating these episodes, and I was trying to pull together, it was sort of 90 minutes of content, and the work that Ralph and his co-founders of Rewired.earth were doing came across my radar, and I was just like, wow, this is amazing, because I'm a conservationist at heart. I hate seeing things like pictures of elephants being, you know, that trophy pictures, and it's so upsetting. And here they come along with this idea that, you know, elephants are performing a service, that they're sequestering carbon and the ecosystems beyond just the carbon, but their impact on biodiversity. And what, you know, and the paradigm that Ralph has created, which Rewired.earth have, you know, kind of incorporated into their thinking, is that you can put a value on that. So an elephant that's alive is worth, I can't remember the number, that's about 3 million, or, you know, it's a big number. So one elephant, the value is of that number. Now then, isn't that, so somebody who's about to kill an elephant, they know that keeping that elephant alive is going to be much more profitable. And I would want everyone to do it because they love elephants and because they know they're beautiful and all of that. But I guess if we're in the real world, sometimes it is just money that, you know, makes people stop and make that difference. And so all of a sudden, if people are thinking, well, actually, it's more profitable to keep the elephant alive. And it gave me goosebumps when I heard about the concepts. I was thinking, oh, wow, it'll actually now keep these wonderful creatures alive, right?
No, that was so inspiring. And I guess that was inspiring to me to hear. And for anybody listening right now, I will find a way for you to read that so that you're not just listening to us talk about it. But it was inspiring. And hearing what you have said about you know, the global scale of people now thinking about it, you know, because it isn't our fault that we're having hurricanes increase. We are definitely doing our best. And I know we're working towards sustainability in terms of renewables and everything. So that's very inspiring. So let's just shift gears here a little tiny bit. We'll talk, instead of elephants, we're going to talk about some blue iguanas.
Absolutely.
Because you recently, is it sponsored or you sponsored a blue iguana, and it's a he. It's a he. And his name is Achilles.
Yeah.
And I think that's amazing. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of a sad story in the sense that I suffered a personal tragedy just a couple of months ago. And the person who had passed away really suddenly had been, been very sort of involved in my work and had been looking at some of there's some videos, and blue iguanas were featuring very prominently. And so we'd been talking about his blue iguanas, and I remember, he was, one day I hope to see a blue iguana, etc., etc. And so it just, I'm, as I said, a conservationist. So I'm very much, that's kind of like my passion, animals essentially. And I also felt really connected to these blue iguanas. So loving the work that's been done there at the, Blue Iguana Conservation Facility by Luke and the others. And someone gave me the idea and said, why don't you, as a way of healing through this personal sort of tragedy, why don't you sponsor an iguana and celebrate? So what I did is, I want to sponsor this iguana, giving back a little bit to the facility financially, but at the same time, it was very healing. I mean, you were there when I saw the plaque being unveiled. And it was just such a beautiful moment, because actually when you lose someone, and I've never had to experience anything like this, it's slightly different when it's grandparents, but when it's a young person who's very close to you. When I saw that iguana just sort of running around in its little home, it gave me a sense of peace. So, yeah, I'm going to have to keep coming out to the Cayman to check in on the iguana. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And I mean, our blues are so important, and I'm sure they appreciate anything that they can get. And he's a little piece of you here now when you go back and keep helping us. Yeah. So I guess in terms of helping us, you are a consultant for the Cayman UK office, right? So what exactly is that? What do you do for the UK office in terms of climate resilience and sustainability, in terms of finance? And how do you think our little nation, and what are you consulting them on? How we're going to get through this? Is that kind of it?
So it's obviously it's the Cayman Islands Government office, and it has multi functions. I mean, it's your representative office in the UK. So a lot of so I work with Dr. Tasha Ebanks Garcia, who's the representative. And she has a multitude of different sort of responsibilities and roles, but a lot of that is, it's a central hub. So if you're there in the UK, and for a lot of the students, it's a central hub for sort of any issues they may have and all of those things. So a big part of the office's function is the kind of consular duties, that kind of business as usual.
Right.
But it's also a sort of platform as a kind of a promotional space to be putting Cayman on the map in the UK globally, but also what I was sort of brought in to sort of support on was just trying to help give a fuller, more wholesome picture of the Cayman Islands. So the UK, if you were to ask somebody what do they know about Cayman Islands, it's I think different degrees of knowledge, and so a big part of the mission is to really trying to educate. And so on the relation to sustainability, so one of the things that we were looking at is all the good work that's being done here, like the protected parks, the blue iguanas being saved from extinction. And so I'm working with the office there to develop different engagements and strategies where we can really educate and inspire and put that message out there about. So when people then say, what do you know about the Cayman Islands? In a few years' time, it would be wonderful if you were to ask someone and say, they saved the blue iguanas from extinction. So cool. That's where we want to kind of get to. And so it's but the other part of it, I suppose it's twofold. My role is, that's one bit of it, and the other bit is to be sharing knowledge and information. So for example, Ralph Shami coming, that was something that I obviously had on my radar, so I made the introductions and facilitated that. So that's another part of my role, is trying to share that kind of knowledge to Dr. Tasha, and then she can share that with colleagues as well, to say, this could be something that's Cayman Islands needs to know about.
And so in terms of getting our name out there for all these, we've had lots of success stories here. We're very, I love our island and what we've done, managed to do, even though we're undergoing this, the stony coral tissue disease threat and everything, we're still mitigating it. And it's just, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So by giving us more global, I guess, name reach, is that going to benefit us in financial ways, obviously in terms of tourism, I would think, but in terms of what environmental benefits is that going to reap us, kind of, is my question.
I mean, as you say, some of it's the goal is, my sort of specific goal is not, increasing tourism or but it is just to create a more, as I said, a fuller picture of, and a more sort of, I think, just so that people, when they know of the islands, they have a better understanding. And then I think also helping to showcase some of the amazing work that's being done here, so that you are seen as a thought leader, and so that you can share your knowledge with others, and to be known as that. Because there's such. I also didn't know that the marine park, the protection's been going on, since I think the 80s. So it's not like this is new, and you've been doing all this good work, and you of course have these amazing, beautiful waters, which is a testimony to all the great work that's been done here. So it is really trying to sort of put that out there a bit more. And in relation to what does that bring you, I guess it's enhancing, I suppose, just your voice at the table, reputation, all of those good things. But I think just sometimes it's not to be the unsung. It's nice not, if you're doing great work, I think you should be, people should know about it. So I guess that's really,
I agree. Yeah. Fully. Okay. Well, all of that's super interesting. I guess, has this been your first trip to Cayman, or your second, or your third?
So it's my second trip. I came in the back end of 2019. I've always wanted to come to the Cayman Islands. It's been a dream. I've always loved the Caribbean. I got married to the ex-husband. We got married in Jamaica. So I've always had a love. All my holidays have always been the Caribbean. And when I was just a newly qualified lawyer, I had this dream of, coming across, and I looked into becoming a lawyer here and working here. Ex-husband didn't want to do it, so I didn't look for a job here. And then, how many years later, I thought, right, I'm going to do it now. And I did actually look to relocating here, but this was just before the pandemic, and so my relocation was very short-lived. But what it did do is I just started to build a network, learned so much about the Cayman Islands. Because of that, I became Island Innovation is a not-for-profit. It's a wonderful kind of global initiative, and I was the one of the first ambassadors, and I was representing the Cayman Islands because I was moving to the Cayman Islands. I then moved back, but even though I moved back to the UK, I continued in that role and supported trying to put Cayman on the map, facilitating, making sure where there was a panel that there was representation. So, for example, got Minister Ebanks speaking at one of the panels. Continues, just trying to make sure that the islands were represented, because island innovation is global. So it's trying to build digital bridges, and there are so many different islands with lots of different messages and stories. And so I felt my role was to help. But sometimes I even thought to myself, well, I'm not living in the island, and everything I know is just from people and learning on the myself. But because of that, I think I've learned a lot in the last 3 years. Last year there were 3 or 4 ambassadors, and I was so excited they were actually here. And again, we've got Island Innovation ambassadors who are actually here. I continue as this honorary ambassador, and I guess just again connected to the Cayman Islands in that role. And then of course I'm now working with the government office in the UK, so another reason to promote.
I'm sure I'm speaking for lots of people. We're very thankful for the work that you do for us, and getting all the collective environmentalists and conservationists, all their hard work out there. It means a lot, because that's people put their life and soul into it, into saving what we have here, and so I'm sure it's very greatly appreciated. And you're leaving soon, so what has been your best, happiest, optimistic in terms of environmental thing you've had coming here and leaving? So what do you take happily away with you? Well,
I'm definitely not happy about leaving. I mean, I've it's been an incredible a month, and it's I've really got to learn even more than I knew. And of course, you learn more by being here and seeing things firsthand. I think, and I've just got a more deeper appreciation, I think, a little bit more for the culture, the heritage. So not just on the environmental side, but just really understanding the island, a little bit better. I mean, it's a fantastic place. I mean, I think you've got the best of everything here, in the sense you've got, amazing infrastructure. It's beautiful. It's Caribbean charm. I mean, it's just, and people are wonderful. So I bumped into somebody earlier, actually, who I don't actually know them, but I just bumped into them in the bathroom at a lunch, who sort of knew me from LinkedIn and just said to me, I feel exhausted looking at your LinkedIn. You've done like some sort of whirlwind tour of the Cayman Islands.
You have.
And I didn't really understand that. And I was thinking, have I really? What does that mean that they're exhausted looking at my LinkedIn? But I'm just passionate about what I do. And it's like there's so many interesting, and I think it's similar to, I suppose, what you do. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just I love sharing interesting. So on my LinkedIn, I'm constantly sharing interesting things that I'm coming across my radar. Mm-hmm. And I kind of did that before I had this role anyway. I've got my own blog, so I like doing that. It's not you just sort of, you're passionate about putting that out there, so it doesn't for me feel exhausting. But I was quite surprised when this lady said she felt exhausted looking at my post, and how have you fitted it all in?
Good. Well, thank you so much for coming, and we can't wait to have you back again, I'm sure. Everybody, when do you have a plan to come back?
Absolutely,
okay,
yeah,
good.
Absolutely. No, but yeah, I mean, as I said, I think just the work that you're doing and people on the ground as well, and I think that's the thing that's really, you know, as I said, I've been talking to people who you're the stakeholders, you're engaged, this is your, you know, and I think that's the thing that people globally need to understand as well, that, you know, this is a real problem for people who, this is, you're living some of the sort of issues. But I think the sort of takeaway message is that, you know, the world is, you know, everybody is focused on this. This is the thing that corporates, everyone's talking about, and but it's also about collaboration. And I think also not to feel daunted by it, or to. I really feel like, you know, we need to have a positive kind of take on it, because sometimes people are very sort of, this hasn't happened, that hasn't happened, and to be kind of, I suppose, just kinder generally, and realise that people are trying to do that. It's a big ship that has to be moved, and it's almost like that cannot be turned overnight, although of course you want things to happen, just being, but I think what everyone can do, you know, as I said, the grassroots level and then at policy level, I feel like it's about working, you know, people working together, but with I hope with an optimistic, hopeful stance, rather than, because we need to be, otherwise everyone will just give up. They'll be like, oh, what can we do? So
no, definitely optimism of conservation type optimism, climate optimism. It's hard to do, but it's important to do, otherwise you will just find yourself sleeping all day. So, Well, thank you so much for speaking with me today. And can I add a link to your blog and your LinkedIn and all the bits? I'll add all those bits in the show notes for today's episode so people can check you out. So thank you so much.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure, and keep up your wonderful work.
Thank you. All right, see you.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you again, Sangeeta, for sitting down to chat with me about the amazing work you do and all you have done in this fight against climate change. I couldn't think of a better island innovation ambassador, and your passion is truly inspiring. I hope more chats with you are in the future, but until then, you guys have to make sure you check out her amazing storytelling in Rewired.earth, How Impact Data Creates Hope. I'll put that in the show notes of today's episode. You guys also have to follow her on her blog, The White Diaries, and her Instagram @WhiteDiariesBlog. Until next time, you can follow us on Instagram @ProtectingParadiseKY or email us at protectingparadiseky@gmail.com. And remember, you can't care if you don't know. So toodles! Script by Bella Rooney, music and sound by James Brake.